The Philadelphia 76ers have hit their first real sign of turbulence this season after suffering back-to-back losses at the hands of the New York Knicks and Utah Jazz in frustrating fashion. Nick Nurse is well aware and already has the team on the course to adjust things. In this video, I want to break down what his specific comments mean and what he's leading into, as well as talk about Joel Embiid's injury status and how concerned we should be moving forward. So let's jump right into it and kick things off with a couple quotes from Nick Nurse here. I want to start with the initial quote coming on January 6th after that loss to the Utah Jazz, in which Nick Nurse asked what the next few days will look like for the Sixers before their next game, which is Wednesday as of tomorrow now. And Nick Nurse says they're in for a, quote, physical practice on Monday. Sam DiGiovanni of Clutch Point Sports follows this up saying, Nurse said that the Sixers had a, quote, training camp style practice today in length and in competition and all that kinds of stuff. I think there was bits of about everything to prioritize, from transition defense to guarding the ball to shot challenges and all that stuff. So I'm going to start off by saying that shout out Sam DiGiovanni, does some really awesome work over at Clutch Points. Super on top of it in the Sixers intel. You can also check out, I dropped a podcast with him over on Pick Swap Media last week talking about the state of the team, that we went pretty in depth on things there, but he is on top of it, and I'm sourcing him pretty heavily in this in this video here. A lot of work from his article. Now, one of the points that was made in here is it's very rare across the NBA season to have this type of gap where you have a couple days off to really work on practice. That the NBA is such a grind, there's games all the time, that you rarely get this time to break it down to the basics, and it is great news that the Sixers had the opportunity to do that. Now, I want to dive into a couple more quotes from Sam in his article. I'm going to pull up this one here. A lot of good stuff that Sam mentions here. A lot of very well written in quotes from Nurse here. A lot of these are quotes, and this is Nick Nurse saying, quote, I think we did that, Nurse said of his promise about the Sixers Monday practice. We had a training camp style of practice today in length and in competition, all that kind of stuff. I think there were bits of everything to prioritize, from transition defense to guarding the ball to shot challenges and all that stuff. Nurse's displeasure with the Sixers' recent loss was palpable in the way he talked during his post-practice media availability. The defensive miscues and lack of hustle did not sit well with him and the team, allowing Utah to shoot almost 90% on shots in the paint and letting the Knicks go on a 33-9 run in the fourth quarter to close out the game, showcase what Philly cannot do moving forward. The Sixers were without Joel Embiid and Tobias Harris for the Jazz game, and without DeAnthony Melton and Robert Covington for both. But those injuries, as Nurse explained after the game and again at practice, do not consummate an excuse. Quote, certainly going to have ups and downs in any season, Nurse said. Obviously, the easy way out is to say, oh, we're beat up and we don't have enough people and all that kind of stuff. But I can't accept that as the coach. There's a way we want to play regardless of who's out there, and that's what I got to make sure to nip. So I especially love this last part from Nick Nurse, talking about nipping it in the bud, having the right mentality, and making sure that this team is on the same page regardless of who's there. That is great coaching. That is why Nick Nurse is equipped to take this team to another level, because he has that ability, that mindset, and the willingness to ruffle some feathers in a way where some coaches just straight up won't. So by Nurse having this mentality, and while we have all these conversations about the state of the Sixers, the roster, the missing piece, what to do at the trade deadline, who's taking a leap, all these things, none of that is relevant if there's not the right foundation built, and Nick Nurse is very much responsible for this, for having the team playing the right style, for having everybody on the same page with what the expectations are on both sides of the floor. That comes down to Nick Nurse, and I love how fired up that he was about the Sixers not executing in this way. Those two losses were concerning to me, that for the first time all year, it felt like we got matchups where the Sixers did not show up, where there was not the intensity up to the desired level. This has been a trait of the Sixers team for several years, that we've seen the nights where they simply don't have it, that they play down to their competition all too often. Now, even without Joel Embiid and Tobias Harris, the Sixers should still be a better team than the Utah Jazz. The Jazz, while they're playing very good basketball, have won 8 of their last 10 and are a hot team right now. Can't be overlooked. They have talent. Lauri Markkanen, Jordan Clarkson, a couple other guys that are worth noting. They're not a bottom barrel team, but they are a team that the Sixers should be able to beat even without their top stars. So to not see them rise to that level is a little frustrating, but for me, the Knicks game was far more concerning. That for them not to be able to get up for that type of matchup, the Knicks, while a shade below the top-tier contenders, are still a very solid team, a team that will absolutely be a playoff team that I likely think probably ends as the 4th seed in the East, and you can kind of pick your choice for where they fully stack up, but they aren't in that same mix. Obviously made the OG Anunoby trade, Jalen Brunson the real deal. That is the type of matchup the Sixers should not need extra motivation to get up for, but they clearly didn't. And part of that was with Joel Embiid, that he did roll his ankle in the first play of that game, and it looked like it impacted him a ton. But another factor that I wanted to bring up is the loser energy by leaving Joel Embiid out there to continue the 30-10 streak. For starters, it's been very cool to see him go on this historic stretch of basketball. Being mentioned in the same breath as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Wilt Chamberlain is special, special stuff. But in the grand scheme of things, who cares if this streak snaps? It's great. It's important to Joel. It's great that he wants to stat. It's great that he wants his name in the legacy. For the most part, I have no issue with that. But when you have him out there already on a sprained ankle / knee injury that forced him to miss a game the next night and is likely to make him miss the next game for the Sixers, the priority is really having him out there to stat pad and get to the 30 and 10. He was out there down 25 in the fourth quarter. There's no reason for him to be on the court. They'd already taken out Tyrese Maxey. They'd already taken out the starters, and they left Joel Embiid. And that ages even more poorly when you look at the context of him not playing the next night, of him looking unlikely to play moving forward. You have to have the right balance of risk and reward. Now, with the Joel Embiid conversation, I did want to bring up this, that he is unlikely to play tomorrow per Underdog NBA. If he misses 9 more games, he'll be disqualified from the MVP race. Now, Joel missed practice yesterday and missed practice today. It is not looking incredibly likely that he will be out there. He was out on the court, and he did take some free throws during the media availability. This picture via Noah Levick of NBC Sports, but you can see that knee very heavily wrapped, and he did not do more than just shoot free throws, couple lay-ins around the rim. It's a good sign that he's at least out on the court, but that is not a picture that makes me that optimistic that he will be actually playing in the game tomorrow. Now, I think this is a point in the season where the Sixers have to realize something, where it is nice that Joel Embiid is in the MVP conversation. That if you take away the game's consideration, Joel Embiid has been the best player so far this season, that he deserves MVP if the season ended today. But as we approach this next stretch, if the sacrifice is keeping Joel Embiid healthy or him going for this MVP, it should not even be a debate. That the goal is a championship. And it's frustrating that Joel Embiid has all these ridiculous stats and for the second time in his career is looking likely to be disqualified from the MVP race because of games played. In the first Nikola Jokic MVP season, that was essentially why he did not get the nod, was because that he did not play enough games in that one. We know this has been an issue with Joel throughout his career, that he has been a guy that has missed time with injuries all over the place, and it's the unfortunate reality. It's the way things breaks, that he does have a unique body at his size, that there are just some difficulties with the way that he throws his body around, everything else. It's frustrating. Nobody wants to see it happen, but the bottom line is the Sixers are going nowhere if Joel Embiid is not fully healthy. We have yet to see a true full playoff run in which Joel Embiid has remained healthy. Even in the years in which he's entered the postseason healthy, it has not worked out, whether it be the meniscus tear like last year, whether it be him getting his face broken by Pascal Siakam like a previous year. It's been frustrating. That has to be the priority. Whatever it takes to get the Sixers to that point, that is what needs to happen. That even if that means holding Joel Embiid out for an extended period of time and disqualifying from the MVP race, that is a small price to pay for what will be a cleaner chance at a championship. Now, I do like that Nick Nurse seems to be on the same page with this, but I am concerned with the importance of this to Joel Embiid. I like that he cares about accolades. I like that he wants these qualifications to be recognized as the best. I've seen him get plenty of criticism for that, which I do push back at. But when we're in a situation like that, health absolutely has to come first, and I need to see the Sixers make decisions based on that moving forward. It will be interesting to see. I'm not fully confident that is the case, and if Joel Embiid suits up and forces himself to play and then does further damage, we're going to have some really difficult and really frustrating conversations with this entire front office. Now, I will give them the benefit of the doubt and expect them to handle things properly from here, but we have to see that, and I will be holding their feet to the fire and flaming them if that is not the case. Now, I did want to circle back and talk about Nick Nurse a little bit more and his management of everything. This was another awesome part of the article written by Sam DiGiovanni here, and I wanted to highlight as well. And Sam writes, quote, compared to his predecessor, Doc Rivers, Nurse has the Sixers practicing more often, playing with a faster pace, and operating in more complex systems on both ends of the court. The increased intensity should be to their benefit once the playoffs roll around. And losing the way they did was a signal to Nurse that he needed to recalibrate his team and get back to building the right habits. So for starters, awesome stuff. That is music to my ears that Nick Nurse has this level of intensity. That is one of the calling cards of him as a coach, this ability. And on the other hand, one of the calling cards of Doc Rivers is kind of how easy things are throughout the course of the season. The days off, and even speaking to a couple of Sixers PR people myself, that is definitely a different vibe during the practices of this. That is not kind of show up, get your shots up, run through the offensive sets, run through the motion, and then you're out. Nick Nurse, there's music blaring. People are competing up-tempo, that it is a high intensity. Now, the reason that I wanted to bring this up after the Joel Embiid conversation is I do think it is relevant to note these injury concerns in comparison to practice. That under Doc Rivers, Joel Embiid essentially did not practice pretty much ever. That he had his days off, he had different standards that he lived to. And I do think that Nick Nurse is holding him to a cleaner standard on par with the team. Now, while I agree with that, we're still now circling back to the point where injuries are a concern. This cannot be the type of injury that lingers over the course of the season. That when you talk about nipping in the bud the intensity, you also have to nip in the bud the potential injury concerns to Joel Embiid. So if that means bending the rules and letting this guy take some additional days off, you absolutely do that. He's the MVP of the league for the reason. He's one of the best players, and the Sixer team, regardless of what they do at the deadline, is not going anywhere if Joel Embiid is battling injuries. So while I'm happy with the intensity from Nick Nurse, while I think that is essential to spread within the Sixers team from an organizational standpoint, must be the standard that is set, I do think Joel Embiid is a guy that has a little bit different rules. So from here on out, I am all for Nick Nurse firing guys up, holding people to the fire, being competitive day in and day out. But I do want to make sure that Joel Embiid's health is the priority even ahead of that. How you strike that balance is a difficult task to fully ask. That I don't have the clean blueprint for how to accomplish both goals of making sure Joel Embiid is not above the team, but does have a little bit of a different standard, to making sure that the team is competitive on a night in and night out stance, even when your big fella is not there. So it is not the easiest task. But I do love how Nick Nurse's head is in the right place, that he is zeroed in on having this team ready to compete for a championship. And everyone should be more optimistic that he's able to push buttons on this team and make plays, rotate lineups, create adjustments in a way that Doc Rivers purely has not been. For the first time, we're having a little bit of pushback on the Nick Nurse, some of the roster decisions, rotation decisions, all these things. We are still approaching the trade deadline where we will see what this roster ultimately looks like and then have a more concrete way to judge from there as he makes these playoff rotations and push. We are now in the full swing of the NBA season. But a lot of that comes with protecting Joel Embiid and making sure he's in it for the rest of the long haul. I do want to hear what you guys think. How discouraged were you after those losses, those back-to-back losses? What's your mindset, your vibe check on the team? It does feel like the vibes have sunk a little bit of late, but still sitting in third place of the East with a decent gap behind them. Sixers still playing some really good ball, and there's still plenty of time to fully right the ship and get them back to that championship level caliber. Thank you guys once again for tuning into this video. Make sure to smash that subscribe button, drop a like on this video, and I'll be talking with you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.